I'm delighted to be joined right now by Tom Bradshaw, who's president of the National Farmers Union. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Now, I know you're in your car right now. Those watching on YouTube will spot that quickly because you're on your way back from a meeting with the Food Security Minister. And I suppose that's really where we really need to start our conversation, because a lot of people, including an awful lot of farmers, a lot of your members, very, very concerned about the food security in this country with the prospect of the impact of the latest tax changes in Rachel Reeves' latest budget. Can you just explain for people who haven't been keeping up on this, who don't know the rural life, what is it that Rachel Reeves announced that is causing such a problem for so many of your members?
Well, first of all, Julia, they announced a change to agricultural property relief and business property relief. But they had stood on a platform. The Secretary of State, Steve Reed, had stood publicly last year and said they would not be changing agricultural property relief. So he had gone against his word. They then say they're protecting small family farms. But actually, the family farms that are producing the food this country relies on are absolutely in the crosshairs of this policy.
No, just go back and explain a bit more again. Property relief and this is related to inheritance tax, isn't it?
It is all to do with
inheritance tax.
inheritance.
So basically, family farms were exempt from this because of the need. You know, people they found farms go down through the generations and keeping those farms intact. But they basically said a £1 million threshold, which they said, well, would only affect a small number, a small percentage of family farms, but actually pretty much most farms would be affected by that. And we're not talking about farmers living in the lap of luxury, spending their money. Oh, we were talking about farms that are just making do.
That is the challenge. That this to all agricultural land was free from inheritance tax before these changes through agricultural property relief and business property relief. The margins that we make from food production are so small. Many farms have really, really struggled to make a profit. The reality is that over the recent decades, food inflation has not kept up with real terms inflation. And ultimately, that is the biggest challenge, that we're not making huge profits from producing people's food. It's absolutely wafer thin.
Yeah.
And suddenly we've been told, well, now you've got to pay inheritance tax. Now, there is a way for many people to plan through this. There is something called a 7-year gifting rule, which means that if you pass the farm down 7 years before you die, then there will be no inheritance tax. Now, in theory, that's great. But the reality is that you have to make sure that you don't need to draw from that business. You don't need any financial benefit from that business at all.
And be sure you're not going to be hit by a bus in the meantime as well.
Well, and our members haven't been saving their pensions. They've been reinvesting everything in their farm.
Yeah.
Because food security is about investing in our farms today to deliver food security for the future. But any spare cash now, if this change goes ahead, any spare cash has to go to saving for the future rather than being reinvested.
Yeah, and again, that has a massive impact. And this is the thing, isn't it? There are so many people, townies like myself, perhaps lost touch with just how the work that is involved in producing food in this country. And also, again, the low profits. We expect our milk and our meat to be nice and cheap in the supermarket, but of course that's put pressure on you as well. But also just completely not understanding the need for food security for our country to be able to feed the people of our country. And we rely on you and your members to do that for us. I mean, there's no doubt at all there seems to be an awful lot of empathy and sympathy and support from the British public for farmers, feeling that you've been hard done by for a lot of time. And a lot of that's been driven, I think, by Jeremy Clarkson's series, The Farm. I've mentioned this quite a few times on air, but I had no idea until I watched those series just how hard life was for so many farmers. He said he's going to join protests next week, and there's lots of talk about what you're going to do. What sort of protests are you looking at? Are we in Just Stop Oil territory, or are you going to keep it legal?
Look, there's 2 different events happening in London. The day after the budget, the NFU announced a mass lobbying event for its members. Ultimately, it's elected parliamentarians, elected MPs that overturn this policy. They have to rise up against the government. I know they've only just been elected, but if they believe this is going to have an impact on their constituents, they have to do something about it. So we want our members to sit down with their MPs and tell them from the heart what this policy change means for them, their family, and their future. So we've got now 1,800 members. Originally it was 600, but the demand, I mean, the anger in the industry today I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it is off the scale, but I also understand why. You know, the policy is just such a blunt instrument. And so we will have those 1,800 members meeting with their MPs. Alongside that, there's another event that's being organised, a sort of focal point for those that aren't able to meet with their MPs within the NFU event that's being organised. I don't know who is speaking at that event or who's coming to that event, but really this is a demonstration of unity.
And this is going to be outside Westminster. I think next Tuesday. Here's the thing. You know, we've had protests before. You know, we've had, you know, lorry drivers, you know, with fuel duty. We've seen certainly farmers across Europe stage huge big demonstrations and protests, you know, blockading whole cities and the like. Is that the sort of thing, do you think, we're going to be seeing coming up ahead?
I really hope not, Julia. You've already said that we've got the public support, and the public support through this over the last 10 days has been quite incredible. You know, we've had nearly 200,000 people sign our petition. We know that some 58% want the tax overturned and only 23% are against it. You know, that public support is so important, and we absolutely have to keep the public on side. I just hope the government realise they've made a mistake, that they have got this wrong, and that they're willing to accept they hadn't recognised the unintended consequences, the human impacts of this. On Wednesday morning last week, the very best tax advice was to keep the asset until death. By Wednesday lunchtime, that had changed.
Yeah.
Now, some people don't have 7 years to plan, and I'm sorry, that human impact is not acceptable. And the government have to recognise they have massively got this wrong.
Yeah, I don't think this is a government that's very good at recognising that. So we've still got the cuts to the winter fuel allowance for some of the poorest pensioners still in place. A lot of people perhaps haven't, you know, in government haven't perhaps understood exactly how hand to mouth a lot of farmers are living. Do you, if you had to put, you know, had put your farm on it before it goes to the kids, would you think that you were going to get them to persuade the government to overturn this policy?
I mean, if they want a relationship with rural England, the rural United Kingdom, it's all four nations coming to Westminster on that day. If they want a relationship, they want to build that trust. The trust has gone. Yeah. This single decision that we'd been promised wouldn't happen has just evaporated any trust there was. They need to get that back on track. And I really hope they are willing to just accept that not everyone's perfect. We all make mistakes, and we've just got to try and work together for the country's food security, Julia. You know, Tom, we see all these challenges around the world, yeah, and we must get this right. Exactly. Tom Bradshaw, President of the National Farmers Union, so appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. Let you carry on with your journey there.